HOA Karen called police on me at my ranch, but I'm the county sheriff they had to salute. Have you ever been so wrongfully accused that the very people meant to protect the law ended up defending you against a threat wearing pearls and perfume? It was just after sunrise when I pulled up to the far end of my ranch to inspect the old corral fencing. Dust was still hanging in the air from the windstorm the night before, and the dry summer heat hadn't fully settled in. But something felt off. The gate had been left wide open. One of the horses, Dusty, was limping near the trail with a cut on his leg. That alone would have been enough to ruin my morning. But then I heard shouting shrill, commanding, and completely out of place. I told you people this fence was in violation of HOA standards. There she was. A woman I'd never seen before. Designer sunglasses. Too much lipstick for 6:30 a.m. And a clipboard like it was a weapon. She stood in my pasture like she owned the sky, waving at a young man in overalls, my ranch hand Noah, who was quietly trying to staple the fence back together. What in hell? I muttered, stepping down from the truck. Karen turned the moment she saw me, heels clicking in the dirt like they belonged there. Finally, someone in charge. Are you the caretaker? This fence is an eyesore. I've reported it 3 times. I'm on the HOA enforcement board for Morning Ridge Heights. I blinked. Morning Ridge Heights? That's 5 miles away. This land wasn't even in her jurisdiction. This was my Rankin County property. The very land I swore to protect. I'm not the caretaker, I said, voice even. I own this land. Oh, honey, she laughed, her voice like a slap. Nobody owns anything if it violates code. This is a community, and I've already called the police. They're on their way. Noah shot me a panicked look. Let them come, I said, stepping forward. I'll explain it to them myself. Because what she didn't know, what she refused to even consider, was that the badge hanging behind the visor in my truck wasn't decorative. I was the elected county sheriff, and she'd just trespassed on my land. Karen wasn't done. She strutted around the property, snapping photos with her phone, pushing down freshly placed signs that marked the protected wildlife area, even yanking up small red flags Noah had used to mark fence post alignment. I'm going to report this entire operation, she hissed. Illegal fencing, dangerous animals, environmental damage. Watch me. I tried to stay calm. I really did. Ma'am, I began. You're not only trespassing, but you're actively tampering with federal wildlife protections. This land backs onto conservation space. That flag you just ripped up? That marks an active badger den. Badgers? She shrieked. Don't threaten me with animals, sir. I opened my truck, grabbed my badge, and clipped it to my belt. The look on her face flickered. For just a second. Then she scoffed. Anyone can buy a badge on Amazon. That doesn't scare me. We heard sirens. 2 black and white county cruisers pulled up just beyond the ridge. Karen marched toward them like a hero returning from war. She pointed back toward us, arms flailing dramatically. That's them. The illegal ranchers. Arrest them. But then everything changed. Deputy Hart stepped out of the lead cruiser and paused when he saw me. Sheriff Michaels? Karen stopped. Her mouth opened slightly. Hart gave me a respectful nod, then immediately snapped into a salute. We came as fast as we could. Got a call about possible property violations. I nodded. Appreciate it, Deputy. I think we have a case of mistaken ownership. Karen's face turned 3 shades paler. Waitery the sheriff? I turned toward her slowly. Yes, and you're on protected government land, destroying survey flags and threatening a public official in the course of their duty. That was the moment she broke. Her tone switched in an instant. I didn't know I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. No one told me this was your land. But you assumed. You barged in, made accusations, destroyed evidence of federal wildlife, and endangered my livestock. Deputy Hart stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to come with me. We've got to file a report. Karen shook her head wildly. No, this is harassment. You people are all just covering for each other. You people? I repeated, crossing my arms. You mean your local law enforcement? That's when Noah stepped forward with his phone in hand. I got the whole thing. From the moment she climbed the fence. Another twist. Karen's eyes went wide. You were filming me? Noah looked over at me and whispered. She broke 2 cameras I'd set up last week. Guess she didn't know about the backup on the shed. Deputy Hart sighed. That's tampering with surveillance, criminal trespass, destruction of property, and interfering with an environmental survey. That's not just HOA complaints anymore, ma'am. That's a felony. Karen turned, but this time there was nowhere to run. Her clipboard slipped from her hands. Her sunglasses dropped into the dirt. Please, she whispered. I didn't know. I thought I was doing the right thing. They told me we had to enforce standards. Hart cuffed her gently. There's a line, ma'am, and you crossed it. The rest of the neighborhood bored 3 other well-dressed individuals who'd pulled up minutes later in a white SUV stood frozen. One of them, a tall man in a golf shirt, stepped forward sheepishly. We didn't authorize her to come here. She acted on her own. We're terribly sorry, Sheriff. I raised a brow. I'd recommend a full internal review of how you select your enforcement agents. He nodded. Absolutely. She's no longer with us. Karen looked up as they walked away. Alone. No more allies. All that remained was dust, broken fencing, and the truth, finally settled in the silence. The SUV with the HOA board peeled away in silence, its tires crunching over gravel and dried leaves. As the dust settled, Karen sat on the tailgate of Deputy Hart's cruiser, handcuffed, eyes blank. Her Energizo venomous just minutes ago had drained like the color from her cheeks. I stood beside Noah, watching the whole thing unfold. My hands still shook, not from fear, but from the boiling anger I was forcing myself to keep inside. She'd endangered my livestock, tampered with federal survey markers, violated wildlife protections. And for what? Some delusional fantasy that her neighborhood regulations gave her dominion over land she didn't even understand? You all right, Sheriff? Hart asked softly, breaking the heavy quiet. I took a deep breath. Physically? Sure. But Dusty's leg needs tending. And that badger den? It might have collapsed when she stomped through. I'll call Fish and Wildlife, Hart said. Have them assess the damage. As he stepped away, Karen's voice broke through again, barely a whisper this time. I didn't mean to hurt anything. I turned to her. Intent doesn't erase impact, Karen. You could have asked questions, knocked on a door. But instead, you showed up like a wrecking ball with a clipboard. She looked away. Noah came forward, holding his phone. There's more footage, Sheriff. It wasn't just the fence. I reviewed the old camera this morning and found clips from last week. She's been out here at least 3 times. Once at night. That got my full attention. At night? I asked. He nodded. Tuesday, about 11 p.m. She cut the south fence with bolt cutters. I froze. Tuesday night was when we lost one of our ewes. A small one. We'd assumed it was coyotes. My jaw tightened. Noah, I said. Send that to my office line. Now. Karen's face twisted. No, I didn't mean for that. I thought it was abandoned. The animals, I thought they were wild. I didn't. You thought you knew everything. That's the problem. I snapped. You acted like you had all the answers. And now something's dead because of it. Hart returned, frowning. Sheriff, just got off the line with wildlife. They confirmed that Badger Den was part of an active study. One of the tags transmitted an emergency signal 30 minutes ago. Karen's eyes widened. Wait, study? Yeah, I said slowly. Our property backs up to county reserve land. We've been working with the conservation team to monitor rewilding patterns, foxes, badgers, and owls. But 2 thought it was just an old ranch, she stammered. It's my home, I said firmly. And it's one of the last patches of land around here not turned into sterile subdivisions and concrete walls. She slumped back against the cruiser door, the cuffs clinking as she shifted. They told me to be vigilant, that properties like this were dangerous, that you were building without permits, that I had to keep the neighborhood safe. Who told you that? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Karen hesitated. Then, her voice barely audible. Don Simmons, HOA chair. He said if I proved myself, I could be vice president this year. Twist. Noah cursed under his breath. Don Simmons? That snake lives 2 blocks away and's been trying to get this ranch rezoned for years. I felt something click into place. He wants this land for development. Karen looked between us, finally understanding. I was being used. And you let him, I said coldly. You let your ego blind you. You came out here not as a protector, but as a self-appointed executioner. Deputy Hart's radio crackled. Dispatch to Unit 4. Hart picked it up. Go ahead. We just had a Mr. Donald Simmons call in. Says he's getting death threats from your location and is filing a complaint against the sheriff. Wants to press charges. Hart gave me a sidelong glance. Copy. We'll follow up. I let out a low, humorless laugh. Of course he does. Karen's mouth fell open. I didn't call him, I swear. He's trying to wash his hands of it. Too late, I said. You both left fingerprints all over this. 2 hours later, I stood inside the station office, reviewing the footage with my deputy team. It was clear as day. Karen walking the fence line with bolt cutters, smashing motion sensor lights, and muttering to herself about taking back the neighborhood. She wasn't lost. She was on a mission. But what hit hardest was the Tuesday night clip. She cut the fence, left it open. 30 minutes later, RU wandered out and never came back. The trail cam caught glowing eyes in the distance, the unmistakable flicker of a predator. The you never had a chance. This could mean animal cruelty charges. One of my deputies said. Unintentional, maybe, but definitely preventable. I nodded. We'll let the DA decide. But I already knew what it meant for Karen. It meant a criminal record, possible jail time, civil lawsuits, and no HOA committee in the world would back her now. Still, something gnawed at me. Why did someone like Simmons want this land so badly that he'd manipulate a person like Karen into doing his dirty work? The answer came hours later, when a local reporter, Elena Morales, showed up at the ranch. She was young, sharp, and relentless. Sheriff, she said, holding up her press badge. I heard there was a confrontation out here today with an HOA enforcer? More than that, I replied. She trespassed, vandalized, and endangered protected species. Elena scribbled fast. Then she paused. You know that Simmons just filed a rezoning proposal for this entire stretch of land? He wants to build an executive golf course. I stared at her. How recent? This morning, just hours after the incident. Twist. Again. Karen wasn't just an angry woman with power fantasies. She was a pawn in a real estate scheme. Her tantrum was timed to make the ranch look dangerous, poorly maintained, and subject to violations, all to fuel Simmons' case for redevelopment. The fury in my chest reignited. You want a real story, Elena? I asked. I've got body cam footage, 3 witnesses, environmental damage reports, and a timeline that ties Simmons' plan to every move Karen made. She grinned. Now that's newsworthy. Elena returned the next morning, this time with a small camera crew and a producer in tow. Word was spreading fast, especially after she'd posted a teaser clip on her news site with the headline, HOA enforcer arrested for felony trespass on sheriff's ranch tied to development plot. The footage of Karen being respectfully, but firmly, escorted into the cruiser had gone viral. Hundreds of comments poured in, some furious, others stunned. But what everyone agreed on was simple. Something stunk, and it wasn't the ranch animals. I stood by the corral, arms crossed, watching Elena set up. I wasn't one for cameras. I preferred the saddle to a spotlight. But this wasn't about pride. It was about protecting truth and land. She approached with a mic, calm and collected. Sheriff Michaels, thanks for speaking with us again. Can we go on the record? Absolutely, I said. Yesterday's footage showed a clear confrontation between you and a woman acting under the authority of the Morning Ridge Heights HOA. Can you confirm her actions were unauthorized and illegal? Yes. She entered without permission, destroyed conservation markers, and damaged private and protected property. What's more, her actions appear to have been encouraged if not directed by Donald Simmons, the HOA chair, who filed for land rezoning just hours after the incident. And you believe this wasn't coincidence? No, I replied steady. I believe Simmons used Karen as a tool to discredit this ranch, to make it look unstable, unregulated, and ripe for takeover. Elena nodded, her eyes sharp. And what happens now? I looked into the camera. We investigate everything, because this isn't just about one woman's bad behavior. It's about a system of quiet corruption, about people in power thinking they can intimidate or manipulate rural landowners for profit. Not on my watch. She stepped back, signaled to cut. That was powerful, she whispered. But as we shook hands, Noah came running up from the barn. Sheriff, he panted. You need to see this. He handed me a plain manila envelope. Found it in the old mailbox on the back fence this morning. Postmarked 4 days ago. From Karen. I frowned and opened it. Inside, a typed letter, neatly formatted. No emotion, just instructions. To whom it may concern, I am writing this formal report regarding violations I have observed on the property located at 1275 Dry Ridge Trail. This property contains unregulated fencing, unsanitary livestock conditions, and undocumented environmental hazards. I have photographic evidence and will be reporting it to the HOA Enforcement Council. I was informed by Donald Simmons that if I took the initiative to act as an independent investigator, it would support my nomination for vice chair this fall. It went on. Paragraphs of carefully worded accusations. Footnotes. Cited HOA bylaws. But at the bottom, scribbled in pen likely added in haste, was one line that chilled me. He said if I didn't do this, they'd come for my house next. Twist. Again. Wait, Noah said, rereading. You think Simmons threatened her? I looked toward the empty horizon. No, I think he cornered her. That evening, I called Deputy Hart and requested we bring Karen in again, not for arrest, but for a formal interview. Not at the holding cell. At the main precinct, in a small room with no bars, just a table and 2 chairs. She looked different. Hair tied back. No makeup. She looked smaller somehow. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said after a long silence. At first, I thought I was doing the right thing. Keeping the neighborhood safe. You know? I said nothing. She exhaled. But when I told Don I had doubts after I saw your name on the property marker, got angry. Said people like you didn't belong here anymore. That he had friends in planning, and if I didn't carry through, they'd start finding violations on my property instead. I leaned forward. Did you record anything? Karen looked down, then reached into her purse, slowly, and pulled out a USB drive. I didn't trust him. I recorded our last meeting. I took it with gloved hands, already feeling the tension build. Back at the station, we loaded it up. Don Simmons' voice was unmistakable. Calm. Cold. You want to keep your garden shed, Karen? Then you'll take that camera and get me what I need. That sheriff's property is a mess, and I need footage of it looking like hell. Then we file complaints and boom's under review. County's been itching to liquidate old land. We just give 'em a reason. Silence. If you don't, well, I've got friends in zoning who might take a fresh look at your pool fence. And that shed. And the dogs. Her voice was barely audible. This feels wrong. It's just business. That was the nail in the coffin. I turned it over to the DA that night. Karen agreed to testify. With her cooperation, we were able to launch a formal investigation into Simmons and his development partners. Within a week, Elena aired the full story, complete with the recording, the footage, and an interview with the county planning board head who hadn't been informed of any formal rezoning request by Simmons. Public outrage followed like a wildfire. Simmons was forced to resign. 2 of his business associates were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. The rezoning proposal was denied outright. And Karen? The charges against her were reduced in exchange for full cooperation, public apology, and community service under the Wildlife Department's direct supervision. Her face, the same one once screaming orders across my pasture, now cleaned badger habitats, mended fences, and taught school kids about conservation at our town center. But what stuck with me the most was what happened the next month. I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. You didn't have to be kind, but you were fair. I hope one day I'm someone my community can be proud of. I thought I had power before. Turns out, real power is owning your mistakes. Karen. Do you think Karen deserved a second chance? Or was she just another manipulator who got lucky? Where do you draw the line between redemption and consequence? Let's talk about it below. Fall came early that year. The air over Dry Ridge turned crisp by late September, and golden leaves rustled gently across the fields. The damage Karen had done both to the fence and to our peace had been mended. But the memory of that morning still lingered, like a scar under sunlight. Not a wound, but a reminder. The day after her last community service shift, I saw her again. She came by the ranch not in secret, not with arrogance, but with humility. Her car stayed parked by the road this time. She walked the long path herself, boots crunching gravel, a simple tote bag in hand. Noah spotted her first. "Sheriff," he called from the barn. "She's back." I stepped out, wiping my hands clean of sawdust. "Let her through." Karen approached slowly. No sunglasses, no clipboard, no perfume cloud confidence. Just a tired but steady gaze, and a plastic folder held against her chest like a peace offering. "I didn't come to fight," she said, voice soft. "I gathered," I replied. She nodded once. "I brought something. It's not much, but I wanted you to see it." Inside the folder were maps, hand-drawn layouts of the badger dens, notes on the fence lines, GPS tags of the coyotes she'd started tracking for the conservation group. I flipped through pages of diagrams and habitat data, basic, maybe, but honest. "Ernest, I asked to keep working with them," she said. "The wildlife folks, even after the court hours ended. They said I was a natural with outreach." "Imagine that," I said, smirking just a little. "Karen from the HOA, a voice for badgers." She chuckled, awkward, but genuine. "I deserve that." I set the folder down. "So what now?" She hesitated. "I think I want to start over. Not just with you, but with how I look at things. People. I used to think order meant control. That rules were the only thing keeping the world from falling apart. And now I think the world breaks anyway," she said, looking out toward the pasture. "But sometimes, if we listen instead of shouting, we can help put a few pieces back." It wasn't poetry, but it was honest. And from Karen, that meant something. I gave her a slow nod. "We all break things. What matters is what you do after." She looked at me. "Can I help mend this place?" "Real help. Quietly. No committee. No spotlight. There's always a fence that needs fixing," I said. "But I'll warn you, it's honest work. I'm ready for that." The seasons turned. Karen came back every few weeks. No fanfare. No performance. She helped stack hay bales, repaired broken boards, even learned to saddle Dusty. The same horse she'd once endangered now let her brush his mane. The town had long since moved on from the Simmons scandal. The man himself had skipped state, refusing interviews. His developments were frozen. Civil suits were underway. His empire built on threats and ambition crumbled without needing a single wrecking ball. And in its place, something quieter had taken root. Elena published a follow-up story months later. She returned with her same camera crew, but this time filmed a very different scene. Karen, standing beside a group of children from the local school, pointing toward a wooden sign carved by hand, "Dry Ridge Wildlife Way." The kids gasped as a fox darted through the underbrush. Cameras flashed. Laughter rang. "I never expected her to be back out here," Elena admitted as we watched from the porch. "But maybe that's the point. People change, if they're given the chance and the consequence." I nodded. "You can't rewrite the past, but you can build something better from the ruins." She turned off her mic. "Think you'll ever forget what she did?" "No," I said. "And I don't need to forget." What matters is she's not the woman who called the cops on a sheriff anymore. She's the one helping protect the land he swore to serve. And as the sun dipped below the hills, I saw Karen again, laughing gently with one of the kids, helping a girl pick up her dropped sketchbook. No badge, no clipboard, just presence, patience. Maybe that's the closest thing to justice this world allows. Not erasure, but transformation. Later that week, a letter arrived at the station. This time, it wasn't from Karen but from a man I hadn't heard from in years. Retired Sheriff Daniels, my mentor, long since moved up north. Michaels, saw the story. Hell of a situation you had down there. Reminds me of the time that city developer tried to claim the mountain spring and you nailed him with a trespass order written on cattle hide. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. But I saw something else in that story. Something better. You stood your ground, yes. But you also opened the gate. Hardest part of wearing the badge isn't standing tall. It's bending, when the moment calls for mercy. That's what separates law from vengeance. Proud of you, Daniels. I set the letter down and looked out at the hills. Dry Ridge hadn't changed much. But I had. And maybe, just maybe so had she. Would you have forgiven Karen? Do people like her deserve a chance at redemption after causing real harm, or are some mistakes too big to come back from? Tell us what you think below. Justice or forgiveness, where should the line be drawn?